Good morning, and sorry to anybody who thought we were going live at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I apologize. That was my mistake. I was setting it up for I meant to set it up for 12 o'clock Eastern. But anyways, hey, it's the big baby, and I'm back. And in an effort to continue having tough conversations with people about things that matter, I have a special guest on today who I'm going to bring in shortly so that we can continue dialogue on important issues, maybe set the record straight about a couple of things, but more importantly, create a dialogue to create change, to create growth, and move forward. And then at some point, we'll talk a little bit of sports just because that's fun and everyone loves to talk sports. But let me bring in my guest. Hey, Mr. Blackman, how you doing today?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I can't complain. And if I did, I don't think anybody would care. So, you know.
Probably right. I've tried complaining about things. It seems like people just don't listen sometimes.
Right. So there are many things that we're going to talk about today. And because we've already talked a little bit in pre-pro and talked to the DMs a little bit, what made you want to come on this time?
Well, you and I, I've known you since you were like in kindergarten. You've known me since I'm a couple years older than you, and we've done the podcast before about basketball and seen these new podcasts you're doing about social things and some of the racial tension in the country today, and I was just interested to get on here and maybe give my opinion and hopefully, as we've discussed, set the record straight with some people that might have a misinterpretation about who I am.
Yeah, because there's a strong group of people who would consider you a racist.
Well, that's just because there's two reasons for that. The first reason is they're ignorant, and by ignorant I mean ignorant to who I am, and hopefully with that group of people, once who I am and what I do and the kind of man that I am gets brought to their attention, they'll be able to see that their interpretation of me is wrong, or B, they're just stupid and can't get past their own assumptions, and they're too prideful to get past their assumptions to admit they were wrong.
So in private conversations I've had with people about you, I'll say no. I from the relationship that I have with Tyler, I don't think he's racist. I think he's a white guy from the South and can be culturally insensitive at times, but I don't think it is racist from a malicious place. And you can't always take what you see in a post and what you see in a comment because you don't necessarily get the full context. And again, I've had conversations with you. Hell, we did a 3-hour podcast. It went through 3 or 4 bottles of wine.
Yeah, at the hotel, me, you, and VJ and
Trevor, Todd, yeah.
We had a good time.
Yeah, so like with the things that I know about you, I was like, I won't say racist, but is there room for him to be educated on some matters that don't necessarily affect him? Absolutely. And are you somebody who I believe has an open heart and an open mind to listening to other people's perspectives and valuing those perspectives? I believe that you are, and part of the reason why we're here is to try to have that conversation.
Yeah, and like you said, I definitely have room for improvement on my outlook on things and room to be educated, but that's just the human condition. There's always room to be educated. Once you quit learning, you need to, I guess you did, you need to be learning your whole life. So let's get into it, man. I'm excited about it. Hopefully some people can tune in and see what I'm saying. And if they do have a negative outlook on who I am, hopefully we can change their mind.
Absolutely. So for anybody who may be listening now, if you have questions, you have any concerns as we're going through this, please drop them in the comments. I need you to get this phone stabilized, man.
My bad. Let me see here. Let me
just drop in the comments just so that we can ensure that, you know, these questions get properly answered. So while he's getting set up, I'm just going to sit here and flap my gums and talk because I absolutely love to do that. One big thing I think that gets hurt.
I'm going to move this table in front of me so I can set my phone on it.
Got it. One big thing I think that gets lost in so many different things that we do in society is context. And the unfortunate part of social media and in dealing with people is you lose context. You don't know the tone of voice that people are speaking in. You don't know what frame of mind they're in while they're speaking. So it's really important to turn your volume down a little bit. It's really important to ensure that when you make a character assessment on a person, that you have a conversation with them first. And again, speaking to you, I think that's one of the big issues that you've run into with people because you are a troll. A lot of people don't know that sometimes you are just trolling and not necessarily being serious. You're just having fun. And sometimes that gets taken the wrong way, especially now in a time where people are hypersensitive. It is just very, very difficult to see the difference. But again, because I've known you, hell, since I was 5 years old, so it's 23 years. So I've known you for so long and have I feel like a better understanding of who you are than most people. I feel comfortable defending you at times when it's necessary. But also, if you say something that I think's out of line, I'll check you, whether it's in the comments or privately, just to, you know, make sure. So first things first, you know, I told you I got a text right before the show. And it just feeds into the narrative of who people think you are. But let me pull it up so I can read it directly. But you were mentioning a comment 5 weeks ago where somebody was like, Tyler Blackman did my N-word think that Trey LMAO, and it's like I don't know what the comments were. I don't know what the response was, but again, all I have is a screenshot, and it's like it's not helping you because it appears that you are creating an environment amongst people around you that makes it okay for them to use the N-word towards you, which, in my opinion, is a word that if you're white, you shouldn't even want to say it just because of all of the pushback that can come with it. Can you respond to that, please, sir?
Yeah. Now that you have read the whole comment to me, I remember exactly what that was. I had posted a picture. There's a picture that got sent to me. It was last year during the summer league there at Aubrey Street. And it was a picture of me shooting a 3-pointer. And that guy, he is married to my wife's aunt, and he's just a laid back guy that was probably had a little bit too much to drink, and he was asking if I sank that 3-point shot, and I don't even think I responded to the comment, or even if I did, maybe I said you know it or something like that. But you know, I didn't say that word. Somebody else did, so I don't know why anybody would have a problem with me on that post. I didn't. I've certainly never posted that word on Facebook ever. I don't believe. I don't use that word in my everyday vocabulary or in my vocabulary at all. Now, you know, when we were younger, growing up, I had, my freshman year, I went to Cass High School. And because I went to South Central Middle School, when I got to Cass, I didn't have a whole lot of friends because I didn't have a lot of kids I went to middle school with. And because I was on the basketball team, all my friends were black. And so a lot of the white kids at Cass in 9th grade, you know, they called me a wigger. You know, they didn't like me because I hung out with the black kids. And so hanging out in that group, you know, I got called that word by black people quite often. You know, Tyler, he's my N-word, you know, with an A on the end, you know, however you want to say it. I still never said that word because I know what it could mean to some people and how there's a negative connotation because of the history of that word. And, you know, so no, I don't feel comfortable with that word. I don't use that word at all. And you know, I just that's what that comment was he was saying, did I make that 3-point shot? And he was probably, be honest with you, he was probably drunk.
So looking at it, I think in jest, it was an innocent gesture. But you know, in times like today, as we become more socially aware, a bit more sensitive to the other needs of people, and maybe sometimes sensitive to a fault, you know, one might say that even though you don't use the word, you shouldn't allow people to use the word around you.
Well, I can't tell someone what they can and can't say. I can tell them they're wrong, but, you know, we're going to get into that discussion later about the Bill of Rights.
So, again, man, it's sad that optics sometimes overshadow actual content and context. And again, I'm not sitting here defending it because, like, hey, dude, you're white. Probably shouldn't say that. And don't get me wrong, you talk about using the N-word, people using the N-word around you and towards you. Yeah, I tell my white friends all the time, privately, hey, you're my N-word, but I'm not yours, so don't think you can say that word. So it's a touchy subject, but again, like, I'm not gonna get too caught into this. So here's one thing. I saw your issue with the Oregon and Oregon State no longer being the Civil War. Can you elaborate on that, please, sir?
Well, when someone looks at the term Civil War, you know, in America, there was a war that people now call the Civil War. You know, different people call it the war between the states, or I've even got some proud Southern friends that call it the War of Northern Aggression. You know, there's different. It's kind of stupid, but you know, there's different.
Well, yeah, those friends of yours aren't probably the brightest crayons in the box.
Oh yeah. I agree. I'm just saying there's different names for that war. But the issue I have with them wanting to change the name of that annual football game is when someone says, "Oh, let's turn on the Oregon State football game. It's the Civil War." If your mind immediately goes to the Confederate States of America fighting the United States of America for the right to own slaves, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I think that's just stupid. I think that that football game has no, the name of that football game is not tied to the American Civil War. It's just a fun name because it's two schools in the same state fighting each other in a football game. But there's no one sat around one day and said, "Hey, let's call it this to piss off black people." You know what I'm saying?
So on the surface, I pretty much agree with you. I wouldn't say that a person who is triggered by that, I don't think it's necessarily stupid. I think it's just it's a bit hypersensitive. But and here's where I think a lot of people have their issues with you is just the perceived lack of sensitivity to a thought process that isn't yours.
Yeah, I can agree with that, and I probably should have chosen a better word other than stupid. You know, hypersensitive or you know, just sensitive in general is a better term. Sometimes I just get rolling and I say things that I probably shouldn't say, but it's not because I hate people. It's just because I like you said, so I can be insensitive about some things to a fault.
And I think a big thing is, like, again, me as a sports fan, I won't call myself a history buff, but I like a little bit of history. When I hear Civil War, my first thought, yes, is the American Civil War, but I'm also able to contextualize it and say, hey, Civil Wars happen all over in various different countries. So again, the game is speaking to the infighting that goes on in that state between the two schools. But you know, it's like, as we're trying to get away from some of the insensitive terms that are used in society, becoming a more culturally, more socially aware and sensitive people, I think that this is a step in the right direction, just because for so long the cultural and needs of black people have just been ignored, and there's just been a total like, oh well, no, this doesn't make me feel this way, so you shouldn't feel this way. And it's like, No, bro. Like, you don't tell me how to feel about something, especially when you're talking about a war that was fought to keep my people in shackles, enslaved by this country.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I definitely understand your point, and I can get on board with that. I really can. That's all valid points, and that you put it that way. Maybe it's not the worst thing to change the name of that football game, but at the same time, I feel like there's going to be like you change that name, then you got the Georgia Auburn football game, for example. It's called the Deep South's oldest rivalry. You could make the argument that some people might hear the term Deep South and be offended by the fact that states in the Deep South used to own slaves. Oh, we got to change that. We can't call it that anymore. It's just going to be like a snowball effect of if one person or a small group of people is offended by something, oh, we got to completely change everything. And that's just a slippery slope in my opinion.
So I think it is a slippery slope in some instances, but specific to this one, I just don't think it's going to go there because of the actual words civil war. But that takes me to another question for you. How do you feel? I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of different shows are no longer allowing white people to voice black characters. The guy who did the voice of Cleveland stepped away, and The Simpsons also said they're no longer going to have white people to voice black characters. How do you feel about that?
Well, if you got a white man that can do the voice that they're wanting to convey better than a black man can, then I don't see a problem with it. It's a cartoon character. I mean, if you've got a black man that can do a nerdy white guy voice better than a nerdy white guy can, why can't he voice that character? Maybe I'm just green. Hell, I don't know. I just think situations like that is taking a little bit way too far.
And honestly, for this specifically, I agree with you. And I think that's one of the issues that we're dealing with right now with outrage culture is that you have outrage culture. You have people who get upset by things, who make a lot of noise, but they don't speak for the masses. If you think about people who leave Yelp reviews, how many Yelp reviews have you left in your life?
I've never left one.
Exactly. And if you go somewhere where you would feel prompted to leave a Yelp review, for me, I just won't go again. And I might tell the people around me, hey, that place has bad service. Don't go there.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the slippery slope, I think the slippery slope is one of those things that is fueled by outrage culture. And not to get too political here, but if you think about what happened in the Democrat Party right now in the primaries, is that all of these different individuals had they were saying, let's go here with Phil the Burn, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris. And if you listen to Twitter, if you listen to the people who yell, then you might think that. But at the end of the day, the average Democratic American went with Sleepy Joe. And again, I'm not speaking to Joe Biden as a presidential candidate. I'm speaking to what America traditionally values, something that they know, something that they're comfortable with, versus what the outrage culture typically will say and what they will in their comments.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I agree. I think that some people go on there and somebody writes an article, displeasing with their displeased thoughts about the Masters golf tournament. That doesn't necessarily speak for all black people or all white people that might post something that says, "Oh, this is stupid." There might be some white people or a vast majority of white people that agree with it. So you're right. Just because a small portion of people not be displeased with something that doesn't necessarily speak for the masses.
So you bring up the Masters golf tournament, and if you ask me, they can burn Augusta National to the ground tomorrow, and I wouldn't lose a lick of sleep because of the just the racism that place has been filled with. But what is your issue with them possibly changing the name, or not them possibly changing, because they're not going to do that at Augusta National because they don't have to, but for the writer who was calling for the name of the Masters to be changed?
Well, if you look back at the history of the golf tournament, first of all, before we get into that, want to speak to your point that you made about the history of racism at Augusta National Golf Club. If you want to speak to, oh, well, that place needs to be put out of business, burned to the ground, whatever, then you'd have to do the same for any restaurant that's been around since before the Jim Crow era ended. Just basically any establishment that used to have racist rules and regulations and policies.
So I'm not calling for it to be burned. I'm thinking if it were burned, I wouldn't care.
Okay. All right. Okay. I feel you. The thing about the Masters golf tournament is it used to be called back in the day the Augusta Invitational Golf Tournament. And then one of the guys on the board said, hey, we have all the masters of golf from all over the country, from all over the world here playing this tournament. Let's call it the Masters. Has nothing at all to do with being a Southern golf course that probably used to be run by slave masters. And it doesn't want, it's not referring to slave masters in any way. It's referring to people being masters of golf. So that's another one of those things of someone taking this cancel culture that we got going on right now and just taking it way to left field and just being ridiculous with their sensitivity.
But do you think that's a word that we could possibly get away from? You see how the NBA no longer uses owners to describe the men who own the teams. They refer to them as governors, which I guess you feel what you feel, but at the same time, it's a word that is triggering for some. And with the way the league is set up, with it being a bunch of white men and a bunch of black guys playing in the league, it's like I don't want you to feel like you own me. So I feel like it falls in that same vein. And what would it hurt to change it back to the Augusta Invitational?
Well, the tournament it's not the same thing as people that own a basketball team. It's just the name of a golf tournament. It's the golf course doesn't own the golfers that are playing in it. The golf tournament doesn't own the golfers that are playing in it. The golfers have the choice to play in it or not play in it. They're invited if they've won it before. I see your point and I understand your point. I just still think in that particular case, it's just a little too much.
Fair
and
enough.
like you said, Augusta National is not going to change the name of the golf tournament because they're Augusta National and they can do what they want.
Exactly.
People are still
like,
going to play. People are still going to watch. People are still going to pay outrageous amounts of money to go to that beautiful golf course.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, hey, Chew, for the next Masters, I want some tickets, man. Just give me two. Just give me two. I just need two. Me and a +1.
Get you one of them pimento cheese sandwiches, man. I've heard there's nothing like them.
Yeah, I've heard the food is absolutely amazing there.
And it's cheap. Like you go get a pimento cheese sandwich, it's like $2. It's not like going to other sporting events.
And honestly, Augusta National fuels Augusta. Without the Army base and the golf tournament, there's no economy there. Let's be real.
Yeah, we were at a movie theater in Augusta, and the house that we stayed in, the week of the Masters, we had to find somewhere else to stay outside of Augusta because the people that own homes in Augusta, what they do is they go on vacation the week of the Masters and they'll rent their homes to tourists. They'll rent their homes to golfers, and they have these homes rented out 3, 4, 5 years in advance. So it was crazy.
I believe it. I just moved out here to the Monterey area around the U.S. Open time last year, and they had it at Pebble Beach. And like when I was just looking for an apartment, it was so hard to find an apartment because any landlord who had a vacancy, they were renting it out for the week of the U.S. Open just because they could just charge so much for that week. It's like you're getting a month's worth of rent in a week. So it's like, dang, I got to wait till after this tournament is over to even conduct a true apartment search. So I get it. But let's get into what we actually want to talk about. What about my rides? So this conversation started because I've seen a few posts floating around the Bartow County Facebook. I love Cartersville Facebook. Let me tell you, it is chock full of laughs. So much just wild and crazy things I see. And as you're probably aware, the Rotary Club, who puts on the 4th of July event at Dellinger Park every year, the parade, they decided not to have the parade because of concerns of COVID. And I saw people who were so upset that the group didn't want to do the 4th of July thing because of COVID, but the city allowed a peaceful protest for Black Lives Matter. It's like, hey, these are two separate things. These are both ran by entities that are not of the Cartersville or Bartow County government. And I remember this one comment that just really got me. This lady goes, first they took Easter, then they took Memorial Day, now they're taking the 4th of July. What's next? Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Well, first of all, if someone was to tell a peaceful protest that they couldn't have their protest, then that's a violation of their rights. Not having a parade and not having a fireworks celebration is in no way, shape, or form a violation of someone's constitutional rights. And for the record, I hate the term constitutional rights because you know me, as the libertarian I am, I don't need no piece of paper to give me my rights. But that's just it. Just shows the ignorance of some people around here that they think that those two things are on the same level.
And so I think a big thing that's going on in the city now is a teacher whose name I don't know and I'm not going to look up. She referred to the people who were looting in Minneapolis as thugs. And somebody checked her and said, hey, I don't think this is the type of language that you should be using as an educator. And then she responds is pretty much I called them that because that's what they are. And a group reached out to the Bartow County Board of Education, the Bartow County Superintendent, actually, to have this lady removed. And some people, I saw a post where somebody says we have people bullying one of our teachers, one of our great teachers, because of she expressed her right to free speech. And I think what gets lost is you do have a right to free speech as far as it keeps you out of jail, and there are limitations on your free speech. And I don't feel like deep diving into that but again, there are limitations on free speech, but that has nothing to do with your employment. If your employer sees your free speech and is not comfortable with the way you speak freely, they can disassociate themselves from you. And I think that gets lost on people who thinks that the government's trying to take our rights.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, man. It's been about a year ago. We had a guy that worked for us, and he had been working for us for a couple of years, and he had said some things derogatory to another trade on one of our jobs about our company, and it was one of those situations where we had bailed this guy out of jail once. We had given him money to pay his rent once, and then he goes and he wants to say negative things about us, and so my grandfather called him into his office, and we let him go, and he made the comment, well, I have a right to say whatever I want. And my grandpa had the just perfect response, said, yeah, you do. I also got the right to fire your ass. so yeah, I mean, that's what it is. I mean the Constitution, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but the Constitution gives us those rights to keep us from being thrown in jail or by our government. It does not apply to privately owned businesses or corporations or companies. It's just that's just the way it's to keep government from overreaching and becoming tyrannical. And that's all it is. I mean, that does, but it can cost you your job. It can cost you some money. It can cost you a lot of things. It can cost you your reputation. So your freedom of speech doesn't come. You have a freedom of speech. You don't have a freedom of consequences.
And that's a big thing. And I think what really gets lost in the freedom of speech thing is when they wrote the Constitution, I am very comfortable saying they did not think that we would have social media and have the ability to say something and it be broadcast to the entire world.
Yeah, Yeah, and to add on to that, when they wrote the Constitution, they didn't write it for people like you either. And that's a whole different conversation, but it's the truth.
Yes, and the thing about the Constitution is, and I spoke about it with Drew on the pod I did earlier this week. The Constitution is, I consider, the best, most well-written document ever because it's a damn near foolproof document. And despite its flaws and its gray area, and it's so full of gray area, if you and I want to say, hey, we need a new constitution, we're treasonous. And if we reach out to our elected officials and say, hey, we need an amendment to the Constitution, it's next to impossible to get that done.
Yeah. And you know, like you said, it's the government treats it like as if it's holy. I mean, and like you said, it is a very well written document, but there are a lot of loopholes, a lot of gray area that that should be addressed, but it's like I said, it's damn near impossible to get them addressed, and that's a shame. That's just a shame. 'Cause that's not what the people who wrote the Constitution wanted this country to be.
I don't know about that. I think they did want it to be that way.
You do?
Yeah. I think they did what they wanted to do. They wanted to empower a specific group of people and make it very difficult to uproot the power structure. And that's the way it is. Like, if you think about why we have an electoral college, what it is saying is that the average American is not smart enough to pick the right president. And I'm not going to say that they're wrong. But I know you as a libertarian, and the concept of a Bill of Rights is probably wild to you because it's like, you should not tell me what I have the right to do. So overall, what are your feelings on the Bill of Rights?
I feel like the items, the things that are addressed in the Bill of Rights, I don't have a problem with those. My biggest thing is you know, it kind of contradicts itself because it says individuals are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. But then you go back and people are like, well, the Constitution gives me my rights. Well, no, the Constitution tells me that my creator, whether you believe there's a creator or not, believes that someone born as a human being are born with those inalienable rights. They're not given to you by some magical piece of paper, which is also, it's like, I could go a million different ways with this, but another conversation you could even have is, okay, so then why does someone get busted on a felony drug charge? Why is so many of their rights taken away? You know, it's just it's crazy. So long story short, I'm not a fan of the Bill of Rights as a governing document on whether or not I should have rights. I am a fan of the things listed in the Bill of Rights, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think it's funny that you said something about a person losing their rights for felony drug conviction, because I literally just wrote down drugs. And for me, I struggle with drugs being illegal. I don't struggle with people not like, you shouldn't use crack. You shouldn't use meth, right? That, I think that goes without saying. But why is it illegal? If I want to ruin my life because of drugs, let me. So what's your take on the legalization of drugs overall?
This is another thing, man. It's a radical stance that I take, but to me, in my mind, it just makes the most sense. I'm a firm believer that if there's no victim, there shouldn't be a crime. If I want to sit at my house and smoke my brains out with crack cocaine for every day of my life, that's me doing it to myself, not harming anybody else. Now, if I were to take those drugs and go put them in somebody's food and poison them, that's a different situation. There's a victim there. But I don't think someone using drugs in their own body, for whatever reason they use them, recreationally, medicinally, whatever, I don't think they should be illegal. I don't use them. Now, I want to add to that. I don't use illegal drugs because I know some people would take me just saying that and say, oh, well, Tyler believes in drugs. He thinks that he probably uses them. I want to put that out there. I will take a test for anybody. I don't use drugs. but they shouldn't be illegal.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, look, you're like, once you get to a certain age, you're able-bodied, you're capable, you have the capacity to know what it is that you need to do, and not to go too philosophical. But drugs are not a criminal problem, anyways. It's more of a mental health problem if you have addiction. Because I promise you, throwing somebody in jail for however long does not help them fight the demons that cause the addiction for whatever reason that they got there. So another question I have for you at the Libertarian: how has the government response to COVID affected you personally, just on your beliefs?
On my beliefs, I think it's crap. I think first of all, we're not going to get into numbers because that's a totally different debate. But my belief is that it's overblown. I think that it is more or less just a flu on steroids. But even if it was the deadliest virus ever known to man, if it was something that you could if you got it on your skin, you die instantly. That still doesn't give the government the right to tell me I can't leave my house. That doesn't give the government the right to tell me, I have to wear a mask. That doesn't. It's all just more government, more big government, more influence in our lives. And as a libertarian, as someone who believes in personal liberty, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
So then, don't you think that the government has the obligation to save us from ourselves, because they govern us, and they are supposed to look out for our well-being and do what's best for the interest of the people and the country?
The government does. They have the right to make suggestions to what I should do. But the moment they start telling me, okay, you have a curfew, you're 30 years old, but you have to be in your house by 9 o'clock. Yeah, there's been other governments that started those types of laws and regulations. And I just want you to go back and look at those types of governments and throughout history. Tell me who they are and tell me how that ended for the people. There's one in Venezuela right now, and it's not going real well at all.
But the Venezuela thing is so sticky because there are so many other factors that lead to what's going on in Venezuela. I've read a little bit into Venezuela. It's been a minute, so I'm not going to get too deep into Venezuela because I don't want to be ignorant on here. But again, you don't think the government is supposed to save us from ourselves?
No, not at all. I think the government's there to make certain laws that could how should I say this? I think the government is there to I'm trying to think the best way to say this. There are certain laws, if the government's there, if I go out and kill someone, they're there to throw my ass in jail. If I go out and rob someone's house, they're there to give me those consequences. They're not there to tell me I can't leave my house. They're not there to, like you said, save me from myself. I'm grown. If I can make those decisions myself, I don't care what the government, how stupid or ignorant the government thinks I am. It's not their place. That's the reason, that's the reason those old bunch of white guys got together and decided that Great Britain was no longer well equipped enough to govern them, because they wanted to tell them, oh, you can do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, while all the while taking their money. So I don't think that the government should tell us what we can and can't do as far as that.
So with that, ideally, what direction do you think the United States political structure needs to go? Because you were in the comments the other day talking about the Libertarian Party. Actually, the last two pods, you brought it up. Which direction do you think we should go as a country?
Well, I think a Libertarian party candidate would be great. Granted, the president only has so much power, but I think we get more towards libertarian policies and libertarian beliefs. I think it would be better. I think that, and granted, I know I've made this comment before, and the backlash I get from black people is unbelievable, because they can only think one way, or the people that have argued with me like this can only think one way.
There you go, bring it up.
What'd you say?
I said, there you go. Clean it up. Don't say
Yeah,
they. Not all of them.
the people that have argued this with me, not all black people, but there have been black people that have argued. Oh well, George Washington and Ben Franklin, they were racist, so we can't say we need to believe like they did. Okay, take that out of it and apply those libertarian principles to black people, to white people, to people of Asian descent. It's Hispanics. It's the best way. It is. That's what they were. Our founding fathers were libertarians, and you can't convince me otherwise. And if you take away the part about them being racist assholes, then it's to me it's the best system.
So when you talk about them being racist, and I think that's an interesting conversation to have, because here's something that I'm about to say that may not be popular. Just because a person is racist does not mean that their theories, their practices, if used without the racial bias, are wrong. Like, I think it's very important to understand some of the good things that racist people did. Again, we're not going to praise them because they're racist. Absolutely not. And when we talk about the good things that they did, we have to properly contextualize how the racial bias affected the decision making. But yes, was George Washington, Ben Franklin libertarian towards white people? Absolutely. But let's take let's take that and apply it full scale. But I think another thing that scares a lot of people about the whole libertarian piece is that for underserved communities, specifically the black community, libertarian policies could put us in a place that we become even more disadvantaged because we do not have the government saving us from ourselves, and not us as black people, but saving society as a whole for ourselves.
Yeah, we also don't have the government draining you dry by taking your money either. So it's there's two sides to it. And like you said, I completely agree. You take not necessarily the things that those founding fathers did, but the ideas upon which they based our Constitution in our country, and apply those to everyone, and it would be the best system. But as far as you're concerned about libertarian policies and how that could negatively affect the black community, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. I can definitely understand, because the black man has been told for so long he has to lean on the government. But I also think that if you had someone of libertarian beliefs that could empower black people and say, hey, no, you do not need the government. This is what you can do this. I think it could be real beneficial. You start empowering black business owners, maybe come up with some kind of some kind of funding, but that's like a one-time thing, but not like a continual, just to try to maybe help them get going and show them, different give them different benefits. But I definitely understand your point, and that's something that I'd like, could definitely look into and be able to speak more intelligently about it later.
So I was listening to a Breakfast Club interview yesterday where they had Jon Stewart on, and the big thing about they were talking about, in order to get equality, black people need equity. And you speak to a grant type of system that empowers black business owners to create a stronger black middle class. And I think that is the direction that the country should go with reparations, because I do believe that black America, descendants of slaves, are owed a debt. Right. I firmly believe that. And honestly, I don't care who you pull it from, that this country has thrived on the backs of our people, and we have not been able to reap the benefits. You look at something as simple as veterans returning home and not being allowed to use their VA loan to get a house. Do you know, like having the ability to have your own house, be a homeowner, is so important to just gaining equity and having an asset. So I I'm getting to where I think that there should be grant programs, right, that empower Black people. But again, once the playing field is leveled or semi-leveled, I think that a lot of libertarian policies will be great for the country. And more importantly, I think that we just need something to shake up this far left or this far right that we're living in, because that's not healthy for anyone but the elite.
Yeah, and I completely agree. When you were talking, I was just thinking, even if it's not a grant where you are handed money and it's yours, maybe if it's like in a no interest, pay back when you can type loan, where it's not costing you any money, but it's money to help you get going. I mean, I don't know that there's people that are smarter than me that could probably figure that out better than I can. But I definitely agree with you. I think that there should be some type of help for Black business owners or Black single mothers, even if there were some kind of libertarian policies that got started in our country. I think that like you said, for a little while, there would still need to be some kind of help.
So my only pushback on that is I just think that just Black people, period, who are descendants of slaves, deserve something. And again, like you said, there are people smarter than both of us who can help figure this out. But I think conversations at our level, at the bottom, can kind of help fuel that, because do we really want the government to come up with the plan to help the people?
No, because the government coming up with a plan is also the government coming up with a plan to pad their pockets.
Exactly.
The Democratic Party and the Republican Party both, they can say, oh, we got your best interest in mind, but what they have in mind is their bank account, and that's the truth. That's just the truth.
And it's so sad, because if you look at just the stimulus checks that came out during this whole COVID piece, it's like you're giving working people $1,200 check, but you're bailing out big business. And this whole trickle down Reaganomics thing is not as effective as it's painted out to be. And again, I think there is some validity to trickle down economics. Let's not act like it does not work. But again, the way that it is in theory, it's great, but the actual day-to-day application is crazy. It's like, why are we bailing out the big businesses who are going to be able to bounce back and not giving the people an opportunity to actually get funds or have just financial relief during this time while the economy is at a standstill? So I want to pivot into another little piece. Is what you talked a little bit about the government taking your money in taxes. Obviously, we need taxes because we need roads, we need schools. But where do you fall on taxes? And we don't have to get into a percentage because that's far too specific. But yeah, tell me how you feel about taxes.
It's theft. Bottom line, it's theft. I mean, you look at and granted, there might be a very small percentage that needs to be taxed, but I firmly believe that if you did away with a lot of the taxes in our country, and roads and schools and other government entities were built privately, I think it would I think it would happen. B, I think it would happen more efficiently, and C, I think it would be better quality. So that's my opinion. That's my opinion on that.
So what you're telling me is the United States government is one of the worst run businesses in the country.
I think the United States government is one of the most crooked businesses in the country. I wouldn't say it's one of the worst run, because they are making tons of money off of us. So I wouldn't say, and that is after all, isn't that the point of business? Make money, right? If you ain't making money, why are you in business?
And you can screw people over at the same time and keep them coming back. Why not? Cut your costs.
That's right. That's right.
So, again, in the same vein as taxes, man, what the conversation on defunding the police, right? I'm not a big fan of the word. I don't like the word defund. fund because it's not an accurate the depiction of what defunding the police is. It is reallocate funds, right? So where do you fall on the reallocation of funds for police? And if you agree with it, where do you think those funds can be allocated to?
I'm not really sure. I haven't really studied that enough to really have an intelligent opinion on that. I do think that police are a necessity. Some people are ignorant. They hear defund the police and they think, oh, they're just wanting to get rid of police officers. No,
blame Tucker Carlson.
That's not what they're doing. They're not trying to do away with police departments. Honestly, what I think a good place if they were to take some funds from police departments. I have a family member, a very, very, very close family member, who is a drug task force agent for Bartow County, and to me, he's the epitome of a good cop. He got into it to help people, and now that everything's getting so bad and things are so crooked, he's about to retire. 25 years in, he's about to retire. And I asked him, I said, what are you going to do when you retire? He said, I'm hoping I can get one of these positions in the school system as a student resource officer because I feel like I could help people more doing that than I could chasing them down, locking them up because they got a warrant. And so I think that the school resource officer departments, or whatever you want to call them, I think that would be a good place to reallocate some of this funding from police officers, because if you can catch kids when they're in middle school or high school and show them what a good cop is and be there for them to kick them in the ass when they need it, but also be there for them when they need you to put your arm around them, that can go a long way. Then 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you might not be seeing so many people get locked up for things they shouldn't be getting locked up for because they have somebody. Let's just be real. A lot of black kids live at home without a father. What if they got somebody like that at school that's their student resource officer that can also be a father figure to them while also showing them that, hey, this is what a cop's supposed to be. So I think that those types of programs would be good places for those funds to be sent.
So dang, I'm stuttering. Get it out, Adam. But the school resource officers, that's a really interesting spin because I hadn't thought about that. But I remember my school resource officer, Bob Meeks, and I thought he was good for what a resource officer should be. He could step in when necessary. He was out and about. He spoke with students. He talked to us, and I remember that I got into a fight and some stuff was happening and a parent was about to press charges. And he was like, hey, look here, if they press charges, you can press charges too. So just that overall familiarity with laws of the criminal justice system that you may not get, you're just not going to get from your average teacher or the average citizen doesn't know, I think that's important. And then also a big thing is community policing and having police officers who and who know you, and the resource officer is one of those who provides that. I also think the DARE program that I went through was good for that because Deputy Morgan, Deputy Harrell, who pretty much taught everybody our age group DARE, we knew them, we seen them, and it helps you have an idea of what a police officer is, what a good police officer is supposed to look like. So we're getting close to the hour mark, and I feel like we've had a few good things going on. So let's talk a little bit of sports. I have no sports notes at all. I know you got some sports stuff up your sleeve. What sports do you want to talk about, and I'll respond?
Well, since there was this big documentary on ESPN a while back about the Bulls in the 90s. So we can I don't really want to talk about that though, because you and I had that Michael Jordan discussion on our 3-hour podcast where we drank 3 bottles of wine. Let's talk about without getting totally away from this social stuff. Let's talk about Mike Norvell or Dabo Swinney or some of these other football coaches.
Well, you know how I feel about that. I don't know if you know how I feel about Dabo, but I'm like, divorce Dabo. Dabo should lose his job, not because Dabo should not be able to coach again. I think that the soft conversations have not penetrated his heart, his mind. I just don't think he gets it. He doesn't have to get it because he's one of the best coaches in college football right now. He's making almost $10 million a year on the backs of a lot of black players. So, Dabo, for you not to understand the plight and appear to not to want to understand the plight of your players, I think they should fire you just to make an example out of you. Who cares about the buyout? He should be let go so that he knows that as a coach, somebody who goes into kids' houses, living rooms, and talks to their mothers and fathers about, hey, I'm going to help your son become a man. I'm going to help your son go to the next level. I have what it takes to get him there. You should be way more empathetic to the things that they go through. And if not, that's a problem. And if Dabo doesn't get let go, I think that players should be skeptical of going to Clemson, because if you have the skills to go to Clemson, that means you have the skills to go to a Georgia, Florida State, Alabama. You can go elsewhere and get dang near the same opportunities that you would get at Clemson in good systems. He needs to feel something, because he doesn't get it.
Yeah, they need to fire Dabo. That's all I'm going to say, because I hate him. that Clemson needs to get back in their rightful place behind Florida State and the ACC and stay in their lane. That's what needs to happen.
Bro, you remember like 5-6 years ago, the term was, oh yeah, Clemson, they're going to Clemson. And now Clemson is winning championships.
Man, I was there. What was it? It was 2014. Me and my wife, my best friend and his wife, we went down to Tallahassee for the Clemson Florida State game. I was pumped because I was so busy with work. I didn't get to go to a game at all during 13 when we won the title. I was like, sweet, I'm going to go down here see Jameis Winston play. Well, that morning we wake up. Oh, Jameis Winston done stood on top of a table and hollered some obscenities. He can't play tonight. I'm like, dang, man. And so Clemson, they got this Renfro kid or whatever his name was playing, or Cole Stroud or whatever, white kid playing quarterback. And first half of the game, it was kind of back and forth. And then all of a sudden at halftime, they bring out this black kid wearing number 4 named Deshaun Watson. And he's a freshman. And they commenced to lighten us up in the second half. And I was like, yep, Jameis cost us this one with him just being stupid. Well, that term Clemsoning came into effect because they were on about the 20-yard line with 2 minutes to play, had a little chip shot field goal, and missed it. And our backup quarterback standing on the sideline, you can see him. If you watch a replay on ESPN, he's sitting there, and Jimbo Fisher's got his hand on his shoulder pad saying, hey, it's okay, you played great or whatever. And the backup quarterback, Sean McGuire, he's got his head down, and he looks up, and he says, holy shit, they missed it. And then we drove down, took them to overtime, ended up winning the game. But it was one of those things where it's like, yep, they were Clemsoning. But you're right, man. They're on a roll right now I don't see it stopping anytime soon. And he's kind of Dabo and Clemson are kind of doing what Bobby Bowden and Florida State did in the 90s, and that's just every year they're going to be there.
Speaking of Bobby Bowden, how did you feel about was it Willie Taggart?
Willie Taggart? I think Willie Taggart is a great human being. I think Willie Taggart was in over his head at Florida State. I think he came in, and I think Jimbo Fisher left the program in a lot worse shape than people thought they did. And Willie Taggart came in, and he did some good things at Florida State. A lot of people don't realize this. Florida State was almost on probation by the NCAA because of their academic progress rate. And Willie Taggart got them not only away from NCAA sanctions, but like up in the middle of the field in the ACC, which the ACC has some great academic institutions. So he did that. He just, at schools like Florida State, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, you got to come in and whether it's right or wrong, you got to turn things around.
You got to win 10 games.
Yeah, basically.
You got to win 10 games. Like, look what happened. Look what happened with Mark Richt. Like, he was winning 10 games a year, and then he couldn't get over the hump. Bye-bye, Mark. Good riddance. Was so happy to see Rick go. Oh, I love Kirby. But, and I think the hard job of the college coach is to run a successful program, recruit the right kids, put enough kids into the league, and then also make sure that you have kids graduating and maintaining a decent GPA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and I'm just an assistant high school coach, and it's coaching at a competitive level is a lot tougher than the mamas and daddies and aunts and uncles sitting in the stands think it is. I mean, I was fortunate this year. You know, I started my coaching career at Cass I was Greg Scott's assistant for 2 years. Then I was at Cartersville for a couple of years. Then after I left Cartersville, I went to Excel for 1 year. And some things happened. I don't really get into it. Some things happened. Anyway, this year I got the opportunity to go help my high school coach at Cornerstone Prep Academy. You know, my high school coach from Excel, he's now at Cornerstone Prep Academy. And man, we just it's unbelievable. Got some great, talented kids who are also great students, great young men, and the parents, man, some of the best parents I've ever had the pleasure of being around. And you know, we won 27 games, played for a state championship, lost by 3 points, and it was, granted, it was probably the best team I've ever had the pleasure of coaching. This year, when everybody knew how good we were going to be, the pressure and the stress it puts on you, man, it's tough. It's a lot tougher than parents like to think it is, sitting up there with their clipboards in the stands.
So, my bad. So you're speaking about coaching and stuff, and you have an issue with Georgia instituting a 30-second shot clock. How come?
I think that there are certain teams who are very, very good basketball teams. They're not very deep, but you know, 1 through 5 or 1 through 6, they're just as good as anybody they're going to play. Perfect example of that. My senior year at Excel, 2008, we had 3 seniors, a sophomore, and a junior starter. And our first guy off the bench was a freshman post player that's about 6'4". And after that, we had 8 freshmen on the bench. So I can count probably on one hand the number of times that I didn't play all 32 minutes. And we didn't stand there at half court and hold the ball like you would think when you think of that type of team. We would run our offense. If we ran our offense for a minute and a half, whatever, until we got the look we wanted, that's what we did because we knew we couldn't compete. We knew that 1 through 5 we could compete, but if we got into a run and gun match with somebody, we were screwed. And so I think it just puts teams that lack as much depth at a great disadvantage from the get-go. And people try to make the argument, yeah, well, it gets people ready for the shot clock in college. That's a load of crap. I played in college. I don't think I ever saw a shot clock violation because somebody forgot to shoot the ball. You know what I mean? It's not an adjustment at all.
So I wouldn't say you forget about the shot clock, but it does force you to play at a faster pace. And at the end of the day, basketball is getting faster. It's more threes and layups than you and I probably like from just the basketball that we grew up watching, but that's what it's becoming. And I don't want to watch anybody run motion offense for a minute. Like, let's get out and go. So as a coach, what adjustments would you make with a team that's not that deep to be able to compete at their best with a shot clock?
Well, the first thing would be, you know, I'm an offensive guy. I play some defense, but I'd much rather just stand on the other end of the floor and shoot the ball. But if that were the case, if I had a team that was not deep and we had to play with the shot clock, I mean, we would get after it on defense. I mean, that would be like 80% of practice, just because I know that we got to stop the other team from scoring if we want to have a chance.
And I think it's going to be nice. I feel bad for teams that don't have good ball handlers because now, like, you pressing, oh man, you can't really slow the game down like you want to. It's going to be beautiful. But shit, what else do I got? Oh yeah, let me talk to you about a couple of things since we're talking about basketball. And you made your Cartersville top players list, and you left the best player from our generation off your list just because he left 2 years early. I just had to throw the whole list away once I didn't see Adrian Rogers on the list because, for one, that's my guy. And two, when he left Cartersville as a sophomore, 20-10, baby. Come on now.
Yeah, Adrian's my dude, man. I love Adrian. I've known him, man. We grew up together. And when I made that list, my mind was going through like people that graduated, and Adrian, because after his sophomore year he left, I kind of forgot about him. Not that he wasn't, in my opinion, he definitely deserved to be on that list. I mean, he was definitely on that list, but at the time that I made the list, I didn't think about him. And then when you brought him up, I was like, shit, man, I should have had Adrian on that list, because Adrian was a hooper, man. My senior year was his sophomore year, and let's see, first team All County was Chris Palmore, Donald Rucker, me, Vic Beasley, and Adrian Rogers.
And Adrian should have been player of the year. Damn all that. 20-10.
No,
Donald Rucker,
Adrian should not. Hey, you know who should have been player of the year?
Who?
Tyler Blackman.
Oh man.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Okay, so you look at, I was the most valuable player in the county that year. We averaged 43 points per game at Excel my senior year. Played for a region championship, went to Sweet 16. I averaged 20 and 12 on a team that averaged 43 points per game. You take me off that team might win 2 games. That's why I should have been player of the year my senior year.
Well, they're going to give it to the Cartersville senior.
That's right. They got to be wearing purple.
All right, so as we wrap this up, man, Again, the important part of this conversation was for us to get on here and talk, but also to ensure that you can set the record straight. So just briefly, tell people who Tyler Blackman is and tell them why you're not a racist.
Well, Tyler Blackman is he's a 30-year-old white male that was born and raised in Cartersville, Georgia. Went to Cartersville Elementary School, then went to South Central Middle School, Cass High School as a freshman. Then after my sophomore year, I went to Excel Christian Academy. So I grew up with black kids, white kids in elementary school, middle school, freshman year of high school. Then my sophomore year, I went to Excel. I only have one black kid in my graduating class. So
it's like in the school.
Do what?
Probably 4 in the school. I remember how it was when I went there.
In high school, I think there was 1.5. Nick Tyler was the half.
And what, Desmond was there?
Desmond was there for 3 weeks. So you can't count Desmond. But that's another thing. If Desmond had stayed and Jay would have came like he was supposed to, we'd have been really tough my senior year. But anyway, back to who I am. I'm an electrical contractor. I'm a high school basketball coach. I know people say, "Oh, he's got black friends." They make that like it's sarcastic. Man, some of the best friends I've ever had are black people. Man, I grew up Terrence and Taurus Batiste. Every night during the summer, they were at my house or I was at their house. We were always together. Went to college, played college basketball. Roommate was a black guy, one of my dearest friends, still to this day. I don't understand how someone could hate somebody strictly because of the color of their skin. It's just, to me, as a logical, rational thinking human being, it just doesn't make sense to me. And like we discussed earlier, I can be insensitive about the way people feel about certain things. I might say things that might make people mistake my insensitivity for racism, but I mean, you'd be hard pressed. I'd venture to say you'd be hard pressed to find another white man in Bartow County that has let, like, for example, I've had 4 basketball players since I've been coaching that have lived with me for an extended period of time because their mom couldn't afford to feed them and their younger siblings. So I'm like, hey, you know what? Come live with me. You can eat my groceries, whatever. And people take things I say on Facebook and they take them out of context, and they don't understand who I am. And if people would sit back and look and talk to me and find out who I am before making assumptions, I think they'd find a lot more good than bad when it comes to the way I feel about different things.
All right, so I'm about to close it out. I'm gonna end the live, but don't close out yet. We'll have a couple of comments before I get off. So the one thing I'll say to you is just think about your sensitivity. And others might say, hey, check your white privilege at the door. But again, I know you're a good person. I know you have a good heart. And any person I've talked to about you, I say, yeah, he's a troll. Sometimes he says some stuff that's like, but I know it's not malicious. He's not a malicious person. He's a good person. And hey, thank you for coming on here. I enjoyed the conversation. You know, I hope I was able to teach you something, because I definitely learned some things from you. And, you know, let's not wait 2 years to do this again. Hey, for all of you out there, we got, let me see, Monday I have Josh Fowler coming on to do a Product of Proverbs Season 1 recap. We're going to talk about his podcast that he did with his father, based out of the book of Proverbs. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. We'll also talk about some different community things and advancing forward. And then on Thursday, I'm going to have my good friend Marquita on, and we're going to talk about the effects of childhood trauma. Subscribe, follow, share, do all of that good stuff. Big baby, yeah!